Our next speaker is Danielle Bergstrom, and she is the Executive Director of Fresnoland. Okay, I said that right. Again, 6-month-old baby that's still nursing, I'm sorry. And I wanted to read something that I found on her website because I thought this was so exciting. It's a policy and media lab working to bring you independent research and policy journalism about the most important issues facing the Central San Joaquin Valley by and for those of us who actually live here. Oh, I thought, yes. I want to be a part of that. I thought that was so exciting when I read it. So I'm really excited to hear your chat, your talk. Come on up.
I've been working on a research project on water for about the past year. And when I was invited to speak tonight, I thought, great, we're gonna water wonk, and it's gonna be great. I can really dive into numbers. And my 4-year-old son has sure learned about that. He wants to be Friant Dam for Halloween. But we're not gonna wonk out tonight, because what I've learned in the last year or two, I've taken a few lessons from that work, and I wanna share it, which is half policy, half heart. So I'm gonna really dive into that. So a lot of you know, water defines our politics in the Valley. It is the currency that we speak in politics world. And there's 2 lessons that I want to take from the water research. And one is, and I'll go into this, we are not the saviors of Fresno. We are not the ones who are meant to save the Valley. And the second lesson that I want to go into is this. Let's make our big bet on the people who live here. Let's just see what happens. So this valley has been shaped by generations of people before us who have meant to transform and make big bets on this region and transform it into something bigger and more prosperous than the way that they found it. And the flip side of this coin, at its worst, is intense violence. At maybe best, I don't know if you could call it best, erasure of a lot of communities. The modern history of the valley, which really started when European settlers came to the valley, they transformed this landscape by damming up the rivers and taming them, transforming them into canals that circumvented through the valley. We are actually not a desert, we're a grassland, so we oscillate between drought and intense rains. And in 1860, the valley actually flooded so much that you could take a boat all the way from southern Tulare County up to the Delta. That's how much we fled. You can't really farm when it floods that much, so we have to do something with the dams. And so they did. And now we have, the industrial agricultural powerhouse that we have today. And my family came to California, my ancestors came to California because of that agriculture, and my family certainly has benefited from it. I'm a 5th-generation Californian. And without these transformations, we wouldn't have the economy that we have today. But there's a flip side of that coin. And we have pushed out the native peoples that occupied this land. We exploited the labor of Mexican and Filipino and Chinese immigrants and others who built the canals, built the dams, did the farm labor, made the landscape into what it is today. But then we couldn't be faced with the exploitation that we did, and so the white communities in Fresno grew north, and we excluded immigrants from our churches, from our communities, from our neighborhoods. From anything, from our democracy, anything that would allow them to be included in our society. And we did that through law, we did that through other means, we did through culture. And while it's forbidden by law in a lot of ways, we still do it today through a lot of different means. It's not, that is sort of our shadow in a lot of ways as a community. And then after the dams and after the canals and after the shaping of the landscape in that way, then came the freeways. That was the next major transformation of the landscape in the valley. And even though we had a robust streetcar system in Fresno, a lot of people don't know about that, we had to modernize. We had to find a way to get people faster to the homes we were building on the fringe of the city. We had to find a way to get people, the goods that we were producing in agriculture, even faster to the ports. The train system wasn't enough for that. And there's a lot of good that comes with freeways, and our economy certainly benefited from it, and there's also a flip side. And entire communities and neighborhoods were obliterated when the freeways were constructed in the valley, mostly Black and brown communities. Chinatown was separated from downtown, disconnected from the growth, and it is still struggling today. And as we look into the future, there's a lot of big bets that we still continue to take. We're looking at high-speed rail right now and the construction of that happening. And high-speed rail, like the California Aqueduct, like the Franklin Canal, could end up being the thing that reshapes the economic geography of the valley. It could be the thing that erases the sort of invisible line between coastal California and inland California and really bridges the economies. There could be a lot of prosperity, there could not. There's a lot hedging on that bet. And the state recently, a couple of years ago, also put a limit now on how much groundwater can be pumped out of the aquifer. And if you know anything about agriculture, we like to pump. It's part of the deal. I grew up on a farm, there was always a pump going. And with that limitation of groundwater pumping, there's intensified calls for more canals and dams and other ways to store water to keep agriculture strong. Through my work, I talk to a lot of folks in ag, and you hear every week, it's death by 1,000 cuts, it's a nuclear bomb of regulations. I can't help but be skeptical of some of the water bets on the horizon. My dad, I think I said, is a family farmer, and he just sold the family farm this year. And his reason for selling the family farm was not water, it was not labor, it was not environment regulations, it was overplanting, too many grape farms. And my dad is not an environmentalist, so I'll just put it that way. So all these big bets were made in the name of transformation, of progress. We want to see the valley grow. We want to see a different place here, of a better world and a better life for everyone. But who wins the bets? Who loses? It depends who you ask. Today we have record numbers of jobs, record levels of unemployment. In a lot of ways, we're doing great in the valley. Traffic is increasing on the freeways, which I know it's not fun for most of us, but it's also a great economic sign that the economy's humming. But as I think most people in this room know, and a lot of you do community work, we still have a lot of ways to go. And there's a lot of deep poverty in this community, there's a lot of hurt. But did you guys actually know that poverty has gone up in Fresno since 1970? So we have 50 years on the books of not making big bets and not seeing a lot of progress. So we have a lot of work to do. But for so long, we leaned into these big bets, and they're often investments in infrastructure and in companies, all to transform our region for the better. But what if our next big bet is actually right in front of us? It's the people that we see. What if it's investing in the people that live here today? And it sounds really simple. I actually didn't come to this conclusion very easily, and I came to it by being transformed by working in community. I'm an urban planner, and transformation is in our DNA. It's how we think about the world. We think about the infrastructure and systems that make cities work better, that make regions work and prosper. We're the profession that gave America regional parks like Central Park, Roding Park when it was beautiful in its heyday, freeways and urban renewal in the 20th century. And then in the 21st century, we've now been trying to rectify all the mistakes that we did in the 21st century. So now we're like, take out the freeways, put in light rail, put in streetcars, walkable neighborhoods. That's our profession, that's what planners do. We're utopian by nature, so we're always seeing into the future. We're really optimistic. We know what it could be, and God help anyone who gets in our way of accomplishing that. So I was also, you should know, raised as a fundamentalist evangelical. I abandoned a lot of that theology about 15 years ago, but there's a lot that still stubbornly holds on. You like a good project to take on, transform the world, be of the world, but not, be in the world, but not of it. Change the world, but don't let them change you. After graduate school, I went to grad school for planning. I worked at a social justice advocacy organization in the Bay. And my job was to go around the country and tell other cities and regions how to plan for social equity in their plans. I was about 28 years old, just so you know. I knew a lot, didn't I? So I preached a lot about what a justice-filled society would look like. And my intuition got the better of me and told me I was full of shit, which I was. So I came back to Fresno. And I was armed with a lot of good research on how to fix Fresno, but I knew a lot about data, but it was really an abstraction to me. I'll never forget a colleague who I talked to for a long time a few years ago who said, "Why do you care so much about deconcentrating poverty when a lot of people just want to live in a better neighborhood? Why do you have to be, or why can't their neighborhood be nice even if they're poor?" And that really stuck with me through a lot of times. The valley is not necessarily full of poverty because people aren't working. We just have chosen as a society to value some jobs more than others. We have a lot of people working in jobs doing farm labor, working as waitresses, working as warehouse pickers. They just don't get enough in their wages to afford the things that nice neighborhoods offer. And our society pushes us to find the biggest investment, the biggest bang for our buck, where everyone can win, where businesses can win, where neighborhoods can win, where people can win. Win-win. But can everyone win all the time? And I think we need to be asking ourselves that question. We don't always have a great track record of win-win investments. This is not a call for complacency or a call to shy away from big action. It's just a call to think more thoughtfully about how we make big investments and who's benefiting from them. I think we have a lot to learn from the Franciscans. Community work can and should be a consistent, humbling experience. It's in that process of being in community rather than for community that we start to see people rather than save them. And that's where transformation begins.